Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the invisible forces that are, quite frankly, destroying our focus. Today, we're exploring the highly debated concept of deep work to see if it's the ultimate solution to our modern productivity crisis or, as some argue, just a privileged myth. We are going to break down the actual science of distraction, unpack some pretty powerful frameworks to reclaim your time, and of course, examine the very real criticisms of these methods.
Let's kick things off with a staggering number, 47. According to research tracking screen behavior, 47 seconds is the median attention span of a knowledge worker on a single screen today. Just 47 seconds. To put that into perspective, back in 2004, that number was 2.5 minutes. We are rapidly losing our ability to just sit and focus on a single piece of glass.
So let me ask you, think about your morning so far. How many times has a Slack bang, a random email notification, or just a quick tap on the shoulder derailed your train of thought? We usually just brush these off as minor annoyances, right? Little micro distractions. But the science tells a completely different, much darker story about what this is actually doing to our brains.
This constant shifting creates a severe psychological tax, and it's known as attention residue. Cognitive psychology researchers like Dr. Sophie Leroy use this term to explain why we feel so incredibly drained when we transition between unfinished tasks. When you glance an unread email right before diving into a complex report, your brain doesn't just cleanly switch gears. A piece of your cognitive capacity literally gets left behind, clinging to that unresolved email.
As Dr. Leroy discovered in her experiments, multitasking is definitely not a superpower. In fact, a cluttered workflow just completely erodes your focus. Our brains really struggle to let go of pending work. We end up keeping it active in the back of our minds, which directly saps the exact energy and focus we desperately need for the task right in front of us.
And the data backing up this pain is honestly alarming. Studies show it takes roughly 23 minutes, 23 whole minutes, just to get your focus back to where it was after a single simple interruption. Think about that. If you're interrupted just 3 times in an afternoon, you've lost over an hour of peak cognitive performance just trying to find your place again. It is a massive, invisible drain on our potential.
To combat this crisis, computer science professor Cal Newport introduced a widely popular framework that breaks our tasks down into deep work versus shallow work. Let's look at exactly what separates the two. The difference here is really striking. Deep work requires pushing your cognitive limits, distraction-free, to create unique value. It's the hard stuff. Shallow work, on the other hand, well, that's the logistical, non-cognitively demanding administrative maintenance that just kind of keeps the lights on. It can usually be done while you're partially distracted, and it's pretty easy to replicate.
If we look at some data from Reclaim.ai, we can see exactly how this split manifests across different roles. For a software engineer, deep work is designing a complex system architecture, while shallow work is, just updating Jira tickets. For marketing, depth is campaign strategy, while shallowness is scheduling social posts. For a manager, it's strategic workforce planning versus just approving PTO. We all have both on our plates, and both are necessary.
But here's where the crisis really reveals itself. Shallow work is greedy. It expands to consume a massive 61% of the average knowledge worker's day. It's easier, it feels productive in the moment, but it leaves people with a severe deficit in meaningful productivity. People end up feeling like they're working all day long, yet somehow accomplishing nothing of real value.
Okay, so moving into the deep work toolkit. How do we actually fix this imbalance and reclaim our time in a workplace that's actively trying to distract us at every turn? The core tactic here is time blocking. This means literally giving every single minute of your workday a designated job, usually dividing your day up into 30-minute chunks. You assign specific tasks to every block. And to handle the inevitable chaos of the day, you use what Newport calls overflow conditional blocks to catch all those unpredictable tasks. This forces you to thoughtfully plan your time, rather than just constantly reacting to whoever happens to be yelling the loudest.
For highly complex tasks like software development, we can actually align time blocking with our brain's natural biological ultradian rhythms using a 90-minute sprint model. The first 15 minutes, those are just for context loading, basically remembering where you left off. Minutes 15 to 60 are where you hit true flow state and peak performance. And the final half hour is for deep, complex problem solving right before taking a mandatory break. Now let's look at deep work for teams, because blocking off all your time and sprinting for 90 minutes is fantastic for you individually, but doing it in a collaborative environment without telling anyone, that can easily make you look like an unreliable, quirky misanthrope to your colleagues who just need a quick answer.
To solve this, sources from the Sunsama product team suggest treating deep work as a collaborative team sport. They use collective protocols, like rotating frontline days. This is where one person handles all the immediate fires, bugs, and customer questions for the day, essentially sacrificing their deep work so the rest of the team can focus on uninterrupted. They also expect only one consolidated block of conversational collaboration per day, and they use a clever two-tier tagging system so teammates know exactly what needs immediate attention versus what can wait.
Finally, we have to talk about the privilege of focus. As we synthesize this material, we must impartially examine a very valid wave of criticism directed at this entire productivity framework. Critics point out that the deep work philosophy might inherently devalue the logistical and administrative labor that actually keeps organizations running. As this quote from the Pretty Terrible blog highlights, the system relies on the assumption that there's someone else, often support staff or administrative professionals, picking up the slack and handling the shallow work so the deep thinkers can lock themselves away.
Critics point specifically to the recent college grad test. Newport suggests that if a recent grad can learn a task quickly, it's shallow and less valuable. But the argument here is that the ability to completely unplug, ignore social media, and just hand off shallow work is heavily rooted in a specific type of academic or executive white-collar privilege. For a lot of workers, managing logistics, answering immediate client emails, and doing administrative tasks isn't a distraction from their job. It absolutely is their job. For them, this level of detachment simply isn't a realistic option.
So whether you see deep work as an absolute necessity for survival in a distracted world, or maybe you view it as an idealized privilege that ignores the realities of modern collaborative labor, this explainer leaves us all with one vital question to ask ourselves. When you look at your calendar tomorrow morning, are you driving your schedule, or are the twin forces of internal whim and external requests driving you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it helps you look at your workday just a little bit differently.